Hello and welcome to Just Onside. It's Monday. The weekend's over. It's been quite a traumatic weekend for me, and you'll all know why if you follow this podcast. But we'll delve into that in a few minutes' time. OS, how are you?
Fine. I'm fine. You can delve into it now. Go on, get it off your chest. We know you want to.
Well, I don't want to. I don't want to. I think it's still quite painful, but I still honestly I can't get my head around exactly what happened on Friday. I mean, I've talked about it. I mean, this is where really I get sort of uh, quite sort of furious. Not too much with you, but obviously you do sort of say that Fark's done a good job. But I just think that was a performance that encapsulated really why I'm so critical of Fark. A must-win game. It's a game against a team that's 17th in the table. It's obviously a poor QPR side because they won't be there if they were a good side. We've just had a decent result, albeit not a great performance against Middlesbrough. There's two games left, everything to play for in terms of automatic promotion. We just didn't turn up. It was absolutely shocking. It was disgraceful. It was not just the fact it was a poor performance, but it almost felt as if it's the season's over. Everybody's on the beach. There's no real appetite. There's no real desire. There's no real fight. It was woeful. And that I put down solely to Fark. Because if, as a coach, you can't get a team up for a game of that magnitude, then
you,
really, to me,
listen, they got tonked in an absolutely crucial game. You don't ever give him any credit though when the going's good. You always say it's because of the players. So my point is, you can't. You simply can't have it that way. You can't. He can't not be the reason you're doing great, and equally be the only reason when things are not going, well. And the last thing I would say, just before, and I will let you get it off your chest, is you talk about QPR's position. But remind me, how did you get on against the team that just got promoted because of your defeat back to the Premier League? How did you get on in those two games?
which game?
The two games against the team that just got promoted back to the Premier League.
How did we get on? We
Yes.
beat them both games.
Oh, so that's interesting. So the team
But
that's just got
again, this is it. You see, again, it's misleading. I think, yeah, it's open. It's all about the results, but sometimes the performance. We had this wonderful run of, I think, 12 games out of 13 where we won 12 games. But apart from, I think we had a game against Swansea where we beat them quite comfortably. A lot of the games were by the odd goal. Against Leicester, we beat them 3-1 at Ellen Road. They should have beaten us. They should have got 6, 7 goals. When we beat them at their place as well, it was a cagey affair, but they were, I won't say much the better side, but certainly the better side of the two. The team that we've beaten reasonably comfortably is Ipswich in terms of the top teams. But I wouldn't say, I
so
mean, we've got
so not
six
only do you have
points.
to not only do you have to win the games, you got to win them comfortably now as well, right?
Well, no. I mean, this is not down to Fark. Fark's coaching, I've said many times, he's I've no idea what his philosophy is because if you look at his play, it's very much the keeper passes it to the CBs and they'll just pass it across, and there's no real urgency. And it really is a case of hoping Nonto, Rutter, or Somerville come up with a piece of magic, and usually that's always the case. The games that we've won are usually invariably decided by some magic performed by those players. It's not about tactics. I still haven't worked out exactly what the style of play is for Fark. Reading what Norwich fans say, a lot of times they'll say he hasn't got anything apart from plan A. I'm still working out what plan A is. Maybe it was the
Well,
same at Norwich as well.
Plan A has worked well in getting teams up from the Championship to the Premiership. No,
Well, again, if you look at that Norwich side, who did they have? Buendia, they had
right. So let's not.
Aaron. For one season, they had Madison
Yeah,
as well. They
but
had Pukki as well.
Are you? If we're gonna go down that road, I mean, we'll never give a manager any type of credit. I do not know a manager in all my years of following football that's won stuff without talent. Not a single one. Doesn't exist. He does not exist in the history of football.
You're missing a guy that managed us for a few years, Marcelo Bielsa. Do you know the club that he took over? We'd been finishing 15th, 14th, uh, 13th at our best. That very same side, he took us up as champions.
He
The
also
very
got you
same time.
relegated.
Eventually, yeah. And I told you the reasons why. Because the first season we were exceptional. Obviously, we had additions, but that same side that had been mid-table mediocrity, his coaching was unique. His coaching was different. He transformed players because he had a philosophy. He had style of play. I mean, when he took over, he made us super fit, and then he had a style of play which was man-to-man marking, high press. That is what uh, got us up in terms of also developing individual players. I mean, he made Calvin Phillips into an England international. What you're seeing now is perhaps the default setting where Calvin Phillips really is without Bielsa.
He just was never
So,
that good. Man City,
but
for whatever reason, got him, whether it was to fill the English quota or whatever. You and I had a conversation many moons. He's a very limited footballer. It doesn't
and
mean
he,
he's not a poor footballer. He's just a limited footballer. When Man City bought him, I was like, in what world is he ever going to break into that team? And the proof's
I
in the
agree, I
pudding.
agree, I agree. He was never going to be a fit, and I said that at the time. He was
And
never
he
going to be
was
a
fo- and
fit.
he was fortunate that it was the type of profile of manager in Gareth Southgate that was England manager that's more defensive minded, and hence he was looking for a position to fill in next to Rice. Otherwise, he under any other manager for England would have not even got a look in. Not a look in.
Maybe so, but my point is still that Bielsa transformed him into a player that played for England. Whether it's only Southgate that would have picked him doesn't really matter. The fact
And
that he did play for England,
noted. So, final question: how many trophies has Bielsa won again?
there's a reason why. I mean, you can't always use that
No, but
as
I'm
a
using your
stick to
logic.
beat
I'm
him. No,
using
no,
your
as a stick.
logic.
He's won a trophy. He won. He got us promoted. He's won. I think he won with Argentina at the Olympic Games. But what he's always done is, if you look at the sides that he's coached, that's the key question. And Pep Guardiola said it as well, that if he had managed Manchester City, he he
Yeah,
would
but
have broken the records in terms
yeah,
of winning trophies. But he's always been one where he's a purist. He
yeah.
he isn't somebody who's just going to follow the cash and manage a club and then buy huge amounts of players, or, like sort of with huge values. He likes projects, and Leeds was a perfect project. What he proved to me that a coach can improve players exponentially, which he did with Leeds. What Fark is showing to me that even with good players, there's no guarantees with this guy that he's going to get us up. I mean, we since the international break, it's been catastrophic our form, and it's all down to this guy. I blame Fark. I mean, we had a glorious opportunity. Thankfully, Hull pulled an equaliser back, which still sort of keeps us in the mix. But
We're all
Ipswich play
Coventry fans,
Coventry's.
aren't we? We're all Coventry
Well,
fans
yeah,
for
I
the
mean
time being.
that's the game tomorrow, and it has to be a must win. It has to be a must win because they'll win at the weekend against Huddersfield. Huddersfield are relegated. There's no way Huddersfield are going to put up a fight at all. So they will win that game.
Yeah,
Tomorrow is the key game.
yeah, it
So
comes out. Yeah, the fact that you've got superior goal difference does mean it comes down to. I mean, then obviously it comes down to what one final game is it now?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Look, it looks tough. It looks very tough. It all comes down to tomorrow whether or not you're going to be in the playoffs or most likely going up. But there's still hope, and you'll just be
it's
hoping
the
that
hope that kills you. We've said that many times before, but
it
that's
is the hope that
enough
kills.
about Leeds. But it was a shocking weekend. I mean, I still haven't sort of come to terms with it. But we live to fight another day, courtesy of Hull to a certain extent. Right, the weekend we had a full packed Premier League program. All the big teams played. Uh, as expected, Man City won. As expected, Arsenal won.
As
Just
expected, Arsenal won.
well, I did. I expected them to win. I think Tottenham have not been in the greatest of form. They're leaking goals, which was proved again uh, when they played against Tottenham. Liverpool, surprising. I mean, I did expect them to pull a result, but it was a draw, which certainly. I mean, if they weren't out of the picture before, they're certainly out of the picture now. So I'll let you go with Arsenal first. It's your beloved Arsenal. They won a game against your closest rivals. They're still in the fight. I don't know whether they're obviously going to win the league, but they're still in with a shout. So what do you think of the performance? We'll talk about that, and then obviously we'll go over and talk about Liverpool because there's a lot of drama at Anfield. I mean, a lot of drama at the game against West Ham. But we'll talk about that in a short while. But what was your take on the North London derby?
Uh, Incredible. I think it was probably one of the very few times I've allowed myself to think that Arsenal finally fully belong at the top table that I often speak about. It was one of those results which felt huge, seismic in many ways. Gary Neville coined it very well, I thought, on commentary where he spoke about after Spurs scored the penalty that yeah, and it got into injury time, that this is 2.5 minutes, or these are the most important 2.5 minutes of defending that some of these Arsenal players have had. So I do love moments like that when you feel like there is an enormity where you think, imagine if Spurs score an equaliser, the narratives that would be built off the back of that. This did feel like a huge, huge result. And yeah, just incredible, I want to say pride, but just this sense of our Arsenal back. And when we sometimes use that phrase, it's often thrown around by fans in Arsenal fans' face, which is you're not back until you win stuff. And fine, absolutely, no issues with that whatsoever. But there's nobody that can tell me that when they look at Arsenal Football Club play football, that is a team that is part of the elite now in terms of their playing style. There's two things for me that Arsenal do, which makes me incredibly, it's also consistent with how I see football, but it's also, so there's an alignment there in terms of like that connection between fans and club. But there's two things that they do which you saw in abundance on Sunday, which I absolutely love in any football team. One is the willingness to simply dig in. It's not a case of you play, we play, we think we're better than you, so we're going to show you. It's a case of no. When we have to defend, we'll defend in kind of in large periods of time, just dig it in. Wing backs will settle in into drop into coverage, whether it's Saka or Trossard, and then Odegaard and Havertz. You've seen them; they're running around, but dropping in quite often into that kind of two banks of four, sometimes two banks of five, or a 4-4-2 low block, and saying to the other team, if you're good enough, break us down. And that's always a sign of, I think, maturity. It's not always a case of we're better than you, so we're just going to play our stuff. So there's a certain humility and there's a certain lack of arrogance to Arsenal when they do that, which is to say, we respect you. Come and break us down if you can. And secondly, just in terms of, I think just their commitment to developing these set pieces. There's been a lot made up of set pieces, getting a couple of more goals this game. Normally, set pieces is often, when you think about historically the way we've viewed football and managers, sometimes it gets thrown about. If you remember famously, like Big Sam, we used to talk about all the time in terms of like set pieces, Rory Delap and Tony Pulis at Stoke. It'd be seen as this kind of less valuable way to score goals often. If that makes sense. It was never the most chic or most talked about or looked upon in a very attractive way. But yet Arsenal are like, this is a major facet of the game, and I wouldn't say perfected it, of course they haven't, but they've literally, you can tell they pay a lot of attention to it, and this is reaping dividends in both boxes. Again, it doesn't always work. They went through a little period where they didn't because teams started to really like focus in on that. So it's just this humility to their footballing approach in terms of knowing that, hey, we have to defend. If you want to win the big stuff, you can't just be like, listen, we're just going to have a game of football and see where it takes us. No, you've got to be willing to suffer. You've got to be willing to struggle, knowing that you've got the talent anyway on the counter to always score goals, which clearly they have, scoring another 3. So away from home, they've been absolutely prolific for the most part. So, look, it's an incredible result for Arsenal. Were they at their scintillating best? No, but I don't think they needed to be. They knew that they had enough in the tank to beat a Spurs team in terms of the gaps would appear, and again getting a couple of set piece goals. I thought they were fairly comfortable for the most part, and then obviously nearly threw it away, right, with nervous moments from the goalkeeper and then a big mistake from Declan Rice. So look, incredible from Arsenal. I've said to him a few weeks ago, if you remember, after the defeat against Villa, you go again. You force Man City to win all their games of football. If you remember, I was relatively optimistic. And the reason why I was optimistic, I wasn't going to say optimistic. I'm not optimistic that they win the title. If you told me right now, I still think it's Man City's. But I think you owe it to yourself. I don't think you owe it to the league, but I think the league needs also Arsenal to keep winning to some extent, because the league does need some credibility. Another Man City win, fine, great for them, credit to them. I will give them their due rewards and accolades. But I think just as a overall neutral perspective, you want teams pushing at the top, you want teams pushing at the bottom, you want a competitive league, but you don't want Man City running away with it. So if it wasn't for Arsenal, if it wasn't for Liverpool, this would have been another foregone conclusion, wouldn't it? So look, incredible achievement, I thought, going into Spurs away from home, tough game, pressurized game. Spurs clearly want to win to boost their chances of top 4, but also to affect Arsenal's chances of Premier League title glory. And I just think this is going to give them a great deal of confidence. Hopefully, next game, home to Bournemouth, to get the business done. And then obviously the Old Trafford game looms large. You can only win your games of football. And if they win their games of football, they'll be at 89 points, which is a good improvement on last season. you simply have to keep the other team honest. That's all you can do. That's what's in there. And I think if they do end the season on that note, I think they'll get a lot of credit. Actually, I'm not saying credit matters, but I think they will, although they'll be disappointed massively. So I think teams and fans, generally footballing fraternity alike, will say, look, 89 points is not to be sniffed at. I think that's what they're aiming for. I think anything less won't get the job done. I do still think, though, if they can get 3 wins, I still think there'll be moments in games to come. I'm sure for Arsenal as well, but games for Man City where there will be some situations which we saw even at the Forest game. So I think there'll be situations that City will also have to overcome because pressure does funny things. So incredible result. Huge credit to Mikel Arteta and the team. I thought they were, in the end, worthy of their 3 points.
I mean, I think in terms of the game, I'll just quickly talk about the game and what I saw. I mean, I saw sort of 50 odd minutes and the rest I've had to watch on highlights, but they had a couple of great chances, Spurs. Romero had some great chances. There was an opportunity and then he hit the post. There was the offside goal by the barest of margins as well. So again, maybe this is what happens when you're playing well, that you get the rub of the green, you get the stroke of luck. And it would have, I'm not sure exactly what difference it would have made, but certainly if that goal had been not chalked off, it might have at least made the game slightly more interesting. In the end, I mean, they pulled 2 goals back, but I don't know. It never looked really that, certainly from the highlights that I watched, that it was going to be anything other than an Arsenal victory. But this is where me and you differ. I think this is. I've always said that it's perhaps easier sometimes for some clubs to chase rather than be sort of leading the pack, because sometimes there's a slightly different pressure with leading the pack. And this is where I think Arsenal and Liverpool perhaps are weaker. City have done this many, many times. They've won the league numerous times. So they know what it is like to be the front runner and to ensure that you are always going to be the front runner and win eventually. Arsenal did it last season as well. They were the front runners and then suddenly they imploded. Liverpool as well, this season as well, they were thereabouts. It was in their hands. They've blown it. This is what sometimes City don't do. When it's in their hands, they make sure that they turn the screw. Against Forest, I mean, I didn't watch the game by all accounts and look at the stats as well. Forest were unlucky. They should have got something out of that game. But what City will do when they're in the lead, when they're leading the pack, they will find a way to win games. I think this is where Arsenal and Liverpool have failed. For me, I would go as far as sort of saying in terms of footballing ability, Arsenal are the best side in the league in terms of pure footballing ability. But Manchester City are experienced at winning things. And this is where the problem is. That Arsenal side should at least have 2 trophies this season. That's how good they are. As an Arsenal fan, the expectation should be much more. I can't just, if I was an Arsenal fan, just say, all right, we've improved, we've done well, we had a good season last season, we've had a good season this season. No, if you are one of the best sides in the league, if not the best, it has to be reflected by trophies. If you have another year without a trophy, as an Arsenal fan, that should be unacceptable.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a simple question, and I only want a quick answer. You don't get to kind of elongate it, what have you. Manchester United beat Man City in the FA Cup final. Who's had a better season, Man United or Arsenal? Arsenal finished second to Man City.
It will be Man United. And the reason why I'll say, if they do win, I'll tell you why. They've been horrific. They've been horrific. They've been awful. No. You've got to.
What is Manchester United's goal difference?
The reason why. Okay.
What is the Manchester United's goal difference?
The caveat to this is how good a team you are. You've got to look at that. Man United are awful. They've been absolutely horrific. How on earth they're in the position they are is a mystery to me.
Which is what?
Is it 6?
I don't care what position they're in. They're an average team. They're an average team who's finishing in an average position. Who's going to finish in an average position?
If they win a trophy, ultimately, if you look at the annals of history, you're not looking at who finished second. You're looking at who's won trophies.
They won a trophy last year. Who's a better
Mm.
team, Arsenal or Man United? United won a trophy last year. Who's a better
How many
team?
teams did Arsenal? How many trophies did Arsenal win last season?
0. And you know what? Sign me up for this every single year for the next 3 or 4 years.
Right.
No
This
issues.
is one where I would love the audience.
No,
No, because
I
this is not.
cannot understand for the life of me how you can suggest that Man United have had a better season. Their goal difference, if I'm not mistaken, is +1. Arsenal's is +55-ish or something.
If we're talking
In
about
what
the champion,
world?
no. If we're talking about if we're talking about the league,
And it's all that matters. Because
no.
the cup games, you can draw 3-3 against a championship team and win on penalties, as Manchester United proved the other day, and somehow still get to a final. Look,
Right. What we need to do is I need to ask the audience on this one, because this is where
Lord have mercy.
Does trophies mean nothing? That's the thing.
It's
Ultimately,
context, Ayub. Context.
no. Well, let we've offered
No,
our
I want
opinion.
you to decide. You decide.
Well, mine is simple. Mine is simple. Arsenal are far superior football side, but ultimately, a season is defined by what have you won? If you've won nothing, if both sides win nothing, then by a country mile,
Answer me this.
it's Arsenal.
Answer me this. What's more valuable, a close second place finish or an FA Cup win?
FA Cup win.
What
I'll
is
be
the
honest
great?
with you.
What is the greater barometer?
FA
What is the greater barometer of a successful team?
FA Cup win. In this context, I'm purely because ultimately it's about what you win. Second gets you
It's
nothing.
not
It'll get you into Champions League.
I'll tell you why it's not going to matter. I'll tell you why it's not going to matter. It doesn't matter because the team that's going to finish most likely second in the Premier League is going to finish second and go again next year and hopefully try and challenge for the title again. The team that's going to win the FA Cup potentially in your scenario, they're going to sack their manager. They're going to
Doesn't matter.
sack their
We're talking
manager.
about the clubs. We're talking about
Yeah,
clubs
but
in sport.
the clubs made the judgment call that they've not been successful. That's my point to you.
Doesn't
How
matter
is
who's
Eric
won.
Ten Hag?
No. We've talked about the question that you posed was who's had the most successful season.
Do you think when Eric Ten Hag's pleading for his job, he'll go into that boardroom and say, guys, just so you know, like, look at Arsenal, look at me, I've had a better season than them.
I think he should do.
Do you think that's the first line of?
I think he should do. But obviously, football is a little bit more than that. Because
it'll be a short meeting if he
does.
But
this is where I think there's a huge difference between my perspective on sport and yours.
One's
ultimately,
right, one's
for
wrong.
me, no. Okay. Ultimately, sport is purely simple. It's about winners and losers. If you finish second, you get nothing for second. Yes, you get a place in the Champions League, but in
You'll
terms
be hoping for second.
no. But again, the second in the Championship means something because you are actually obviously getting promoted. So, I'm absolutely firm in my stance. Ultimately, it's about winning things. Arsenal, if they end up winning nothing, if Man United win the FA Cup, which they won't, but if they do end up winning the FA Cup, in my eyes, it's a more successful season. Ultimately, it's about trophies. It's about no, but this is where I don't think this is clear cut. Your position,
no, it is clear cut.
People.
It's so clear cut. It's clear cut. I'll tell you why. If you put a lie detector test on every single Manchester United supporter right now and said, which team would you rather be supporting, Manchester United or Arsenal? It'd be 100% Arsenal. That's the better team.
But that's not the question, though. Remember, that's not the question.
Because everyone wants to support the team that's performing the best.
The question you asked was, who's had the most successful season?
Arsenal. The best teams had the most successful season. Because I define best. My eyes tell me which teams are the best. I don't need no trophies to tell me.
No, successful. That's the difference. There's a difference. You're not sort of saying who's best. You're talking about who's had the most successful season.
Eric Ten Hag is going to lose his job, and he may well win 2
trophies. But that's not the question you've asked, away.
No, but that is okay. In what world? This is the question I want to ask you. When clubs are making evaluations on managers, what are they evaluating? They're also evaluating on success and prospects of success, and their definition of success clearly is a lot
completely different tangent. This is a different tangent, my friend.
Let me finish. Their definition of success is clearly different to yours. Yours is by the off chance, similar to how Manchester United did, I think, last year in the Carabao Cup when they got multiple home draws and they ended up winning the Carabao Cup. If memory serves, more than happy for United fans to correct me if I'm mistaken. But the point I'm making is clubs are evaluating, similar to Bayern Munich, how they did with Thomas Tuchel, that they believe that their chances of success lie elsewhere, especially when it comes to the league. Bayern Munich lost the league by multiple points to Bayer Leverkusen. They'll be parting with their manager Thomas Tuchel, although he may well embarrass them in some respects by winning the Champions League. Similar Man United, they are miles off the pace in terms of where they want to be, which is where challenging for the Premier League title. The number one remit, I'm going to say it to you. I'll say it to you before, and I'll say it again, and I will never change my perspective ever. The number one approach and the number one criteria for any big club in terms of defining whether they've had a successful season or not is not trophies. It's whether or not you're challenging for the Premier League title. That is all that matters for the big clubs. If you are challenging for the Premier League title, you by default have had a successful season. I don't care about the other trophies. I don't care. Champions League is different. Champions League is different. You're playing the absolute best of the best, not in terms of Carabao Cup second round, FA Cup third round, fourth round, or semi-finals where you're playing Coventry. No, you are playing the European elite in groups and then the European elite in knockout competitions. That's a very different criteria of competition. So Arsenal are miles, I'm going to say miles ahead of Manchester United Football Club. And I don't think anyone would disagree with that. That's not to say United can't make that gap up. Don't know why it became a United segment, just to hammer the point home. But clearly, Arsenal would have had the more successful
because
season.
You used United in your example.
It's always United because they're bang
got to, on this one, as I said, the question was successful. And I reiterate, if you're asking purely based on who's had a more successful season, mine is simple. It's who's won the more trophies. And if it happens to be Manchester United, then they've had the more successful season. If you're asking the question about who's the better club, then without a shadow of a doubt, it's the Arsenal. But right, we've offered our thoughts. You've offered your thoughts quite adamantly and vociferously, and completely disagree with what I'm saying. Let's open it up to the audience and ask our viewers, right, what's your thoughts in terms of if Manchester United do win the FA Cup, would you consider it to be a more successful season? We're not asking about whether it's a better club. We're just purely talking about if they had a more successful season. But we'll leave it to them. We'll draw a line on this topic. Let's talk about my beloved Liverpool. In addition to Leeds, it was quite a dramatic game, and in terms of the aftermath as well, there was some fallout. So I don't know whether you want to start with the fallout, whether you want to talk about the game. Do you think they're completely out of the picture now? But there's a lot of things to discuss with Liverpool. So I'll let you decide where you want to start.
Just very quickly, I'll let you talk about the fallout a little bit more, just very quickly, and I won't speak for too long. Yes, they are out of the Premier League title race. Very difficult to see two of their rivals who have now picked up multiple wins in the last couple of games, as Liverpool have been dropping points, to see them, the fact that both of them, if it was the case that one of them had dropped points, I might change my opinion. But they are out of it. Yes, you can see that by Jurgen Klopp's comments after the game as well, and he's right. Shame. Some may question whether or not they ran out of steam or what have you. I just wonder whether there was some need for a slight modification of approach to some extent. Now, look, they've embraced the chaos all season, which is the phrase that I've used, and I've enjoyed watching them, thoroughly enjoyed watching them. Just wonder whether or not, just from the 30-game mark, whether there should have just been, not should have been, but they've started to get some players back. Some players kept getting injured. Some players missing critical games. Jota got re-injured, and then some players lost form. Just wonder whether or not a slightly more cautious approach. The one thing that I praised Arsenal about, which is, hey, we're just going to try and keep a clean sheet. And to some extent, they probably would have kept a clean sheet yesterday if it wasn't for the shocker from David Raya. But there's a certain desire, commitment, and an actual love for wanting to keep a clean sheet. They didn't keep one yesterday, but you can tell they want to keep a clean sheet. You wonder whether Liverpool is a case of we're not too bothered about the clean sheet. We're just going to try and score goals. And I just wonder whether those two extremes have kind of been laid bare over the last couple of games. Shame for them to drop points against Palace, Everton, and West Ham in a row will be hugely disappointing. I still maintain they had a very good run in. I won't say easier. I don't think that's fair to them, but they had a very good run in, at least on paper. I just wonder whether it's a case of Liverpool fans will say ran out of legs, ran out of steam. Gary Neville used a nice turn of phrase where he spoke about the fact that Liverpool were kind of working their absolute utmost just to keep up with these two amazing teams, and maybe that's fair. I just think once you're there, perhaps a slight change of approach to say, look, let's just be hard to beat. Now you might say, look, can't change too much. Fair, fine, no issues. I just feel like because they always let themselves at the mercy of the game, you always thought, well, they could go a goal down, and invariably they went a goal down in a lot of these games. Palace, Everton, and then West Ham, right? Even though they turned it around. So when you're always going a goal down, you're giving yourself a difficult kind of mountain to overcome. Arsenal, look at them, 3-0 up, half time, job's kind of done, isn't it? So, look, I just think if they'd perhaps, I think that'll be the one regret they have. They just become a little bit hard to beat and say, look, listen, guys, we're not worried about scoring because we'll score. We will score on the counter. We're just gonna approach these games in a very conservative way to the extent where we're gonna make sure we're not falling behind all the time. Let's try and get the first goal maybe off a set piece. Maybe we'll get the first goal off of incredible counter rather than constantly forcing the action. I felt like that always left them the vulnerabilities of the margins of the game sometimes, which is that the other team can also score. So I think that's the only mild criticism I would have of them. They are out of it, unfortunately. I don't think they've been as consistent in terms of their footballing play. That's the key. When you watch them, you think they look good, they look great. I'm sure you'll talk about Diaz and Nunes, but they've always felt like they could concede. Which I think is a little different for the other two, although City have also shown a little bit of vulnerability recently. And yes, Arsenal have had their moments, but on the whole, they look pretty solid, right, at the best of times. So I'll leave it with you in terms of just to discuss some of the fallout and the other dramatic moments, but they are out of it. I think even after you go 2-1 up, you're thinking, right, okay, like let's just get the job done. They had moments to extend, right, to get it to 3-1. But disappointed Liverpool fans will be hugely disappointed. I think they'll be also a little bit disappointed to see what happened on the touchline. Again, I'll leave that one with yourself, but they are out of it for sure.
I mean, you used the word that I think encapsulates exactly what Liverpool are all about. Chaos, but it's what makes it so wonderful to watch. And their philosophy probably is that we're going to score more goals than you, because they certainly will always concede. I don't think they've run out of steam. I think they've just not been as clinical, as potent as they were in previous games. Because in a sense, if you're always going to concede, you've always got to then score many more goals than probably Arsenal and City, because Arsenal, I mean, I don't know how many clean sheets they've had this season, but there's been plenty. Man City are much more tighter as well. With Liverpool, I mean, it's brilliant to watch, but it always does mean they're going to have to score 2 goals, 3 goals. And if the strikers are misfiring, if their attacking players are misfiring, then it does become quite a difficult task. And that's what's basically happened, I think, for some reason. I mean, Nunes has always been a huge disappointment to me. I've always said that he's just not smart enough as a striker. You've got to have certain smarts as a striker. You can be instinctive, and he is a great instinctive striker, but you've got to be clinical as well, because they always say the hardest thing to do is score a goal. And Liverpool have scored plenty of goals, but it's still not the easiest thing to do. They've missed so many. I mean, I've lost count of the opportunities that they've spurned, and it's cost them dear. It's cost them so many points, and in games that really, I mean, I think even with the game against Everton, I mean, they had opportunities. Nunes had a great opportunity. Diaz had an opportunity. Salah had an opportunity which he absolutely just sort of blasted over the bar. So it's just they became less clinical at the worst possible time when it really mattered. I mean, I suppose it always is towards the end of the season. That's when really maybe you are right. Maybe that was when Klopp should have said, look, we just need to now just be a little bit more reserved, a little bit more conservative. But that's perhaps not the Liverpool way. If something is successful, do you change it? No, you don't. It just so happened it didn't work in the end when it really needed to work. So I wouldn't criticize Liverpool at all. I think they've played a wonderful brand of football. Klopp it's exactly. I mean, it's perhaps not as heavy metal as it used to be, but it's the way Liverpool play, and that's why I certainly love Liverpool. It just so happened that when it mattered, the key players didn't turn up. Salah didn't turn up when it mattered, which leads me on to the nonsense that happened. And I was absolutely completely agree with Klopp. He's not been firing on all cylinders. Is it the after effects of his injury? I don't know, but he's certainly been a shell of his former self. So I have no problem with him being on the bench. As to what happened, I think it's absolutely disgraceful. I mean, I think he's been a wonderful servant to Liverpool. I think he's been a wonderful servant to the Premier League. But Klopp is an iconic manager. He is a manager that demands respect and reverence. What Salah did, I mean, I've still not got the full details. Maybe you perhaps have the details of exactly what happened, but whether he was smarting from the fact that he was on the bench, you don't react to any manager, but especially a manager like Klopp. I thought it was completely inexcusable. Uh, I if I was Klopp and I had a player, I don't care if it's Salah, I would have been tempted to give him a slap because you do
Careful
not
now.
do that. Well, but it's inexcusable. And this is the arrogance of the man, Salah. I mean, he's on a very tidy sum. He
So,
should be
so is the manager.
yeah, but he should be humble enough to sort of think, well, hang on, I've just not been doing the job that I'm paid to do. I'm the highest paid player at Liverpool. I am uh, the man that should be scoring the goals at the key time, at the key moments. I've not done that. Uh, I deserve to be on the bench, and he should have had the humility to understand that he's on the bench for a reason. It's not because uh, Klopp's trying to make an example of him. It's just that he's not been good enough. So his reaction was bang out of order. And when he's storming off, when he sort of said, "Oh, if I speak, there'll be fire." What the hell is that all about? I mean, I know it's a game full of emotions, but he's worked with Klopp long enough. He's got enough respect for this man that sometimes you've got to just understand that the manager is making a decision for the club. He has to sometimes understand that he's just not been informed, and he should have been humble enough to understand that Klopp's made the right choice. Whether he likes it or not, it's the right choice. So for me, I hope he doesn't start Salah at all for the remainder of the season. And I don't think it's a case of biting off your nose to spite your face. I think it's purely based on form. He's just not been good enough.
Yeah, I think sometimes the most obvious explanation is the right explanation, which is that Jurgen Klopp clearly felt, and also there's a short turnaround in between the games, but he's felt that in what was their most disappointing performance of the season, away at Everton in the derby, that he had to make some changes. A game in which Mo Salah was largely anonymous. So look, I don't have any issues with Jurgen Klopp's decision to bench him. That's his call to make. I think I mean, Mo Salah's got a lot of credit in the bank. If this was, let's say, for example, let's take somebody else, and this is not an example or a comparison that I'm making, but let's say take, for example, Bruno Fernandes in terms of the press that he gets. He's still a relatively productive player for Man United. Without him this season, I think United would have really been struggling. But in terms of the press he gets for some of his antics, and it's mainly because of his antics, right? He's a productive player, not quite to the levels of Mo Salah, of course, but because of some of the theatrics and histrionics and what have you, he gets a bad press to some extent. Which I think a couple of weeks ago, Jamie Redknapp was trying to offset a little bit with some more praise for the quality for the great player. But look, I think Mo Salah, because he's got incredible credit in the bank in terms of his goals in the Premier League, he's obviously there in the top 10. But just in terms of what it means for Liverpool, delivering a title, delivering Champions League, and what have you, there's credit. So it's not going to be a huge or overreaction. I think Jamie Carragher hit the right tone, which is look, let both of them sort it out between themselves. I'm just disappointed that it happened because Jurgen Klopp, I think, deserves a strong word, but I think just because in terms of what he's meant to the Premier League and Liverpool, similar to in a sense Arsene Wenger, Arsenal for all those years. You always want to see those kind of great managers, especially Klopp, in terms of what he's meant for that football club, just leave without any real kind of, difficult moments. Let's say losing the Premier League or falling out of the Premier League title race with a couple of games to go is going to hurt enough in terms of not being able to deliver another Premier League trophy to Liverpool fans. Remember the last time they won it, it was COVID year. The fans couldn't really celebrate. Yes, they made the most of it afterwards. But it's something different, right? Winning it in front of your home fans and all the rest of it. And then to obviously to have this happen, I just think it leaves a bitter taste in the mouth. I think it's not ideal. I don't think it's nice. because I think Klopp was also uncomfortable when it happened. Clearly, tell he was trying to just downplay a little bit, get rid of the moment, let's say, and just move on. He didn't make and this is a great thing about what I say is the ultimate professionalism of this manager. Imagine other managers who might have been thinking, "Look, I'm leaving anyway. I don't care." And then when asked about it, he could have easily put the player down, like many managers have done in the past, to say, "Look, you know, I run this football club until I leave. I'm the main man," and all the rest of it, and let his ego come to the table. But none of that. You don't get any of that. Even when he talks about his success at Liverpool, he speaks in glowing terms. That Liverpool is the best job in the world, and that they'll be in very capable hands with the new manager coming in. So look, the point I'm just making is disappointing, I think, for both of them. Uh, in some ways, I think what would have been perfect is if there was an apology, whether it's on social media or something from Mo Salah in the evening to say, look, that's not becoming of the professional that I am, and I apologize to coach. Just because it happened in public. I think when it happens in public, I think there's just some sort of expectation to try and douse the fire, so to speak, by just putting a statement out. I think if it happened in private, I think fine, just apologize individually and we're all crack on. I think that would have literally just killed the story dead. So I wish calmer heads had prevailed, but unfortunately, to your point, it's festered a little bit. They'll sort it out. I think it won't be that big a news in the coming days. But yeah, I wish in some ways that one of them or both of them or Salah had just seen sense to release something. I don't think it's necessary to release a statement. I don't know what your thoughts are, but just something just to kill the story dead. That's what I would say. And I think an apology would have probably just done that.
I mean, I don't know what. I mean, I'm sure this story is not completely dead because, like you said, he's not apologized, so we're still discussing it. But it's the season's sort of. I mean, it was the expectations were so great that this is Klopp's final few games before the mini implosion. They were looking at winning uh, the league, and there was everything was going in their direction. There was a great deal of euphoria. There was a sense of expectation, and it's almost the season seems to be petering out in a whimper now, and this just compounds the demise that they've had over the last few weeks, and it's a very sad way because I really wanted Klopp to leave with winning the league, and it just would have been a perfect send off for Klopp for what he's done for Liverpool Football Club, what he's done for the Premier League, and what he's done for the city of Liverpool. Because he is somebody that I think when he goes, we really will realise what an iconic manager he was and what a great bloke he was to have in the Premier League. And I just sort of think it's sad that this incident further maybe just I wouldn't sort of say it's tarnishing the football club, but it's making it a mess. It really should have been a celebratory few weeks, and then when he does go, albeit he's not going to obviously be winning the league, but I want it to be where it's a united football club. There seems to be just cracks appearing. I mean, there's talk now with Diaz potentially leaving. There's some players obviously talking about potentially leaving the football club, and it's leaving a slightly unsavoury taste in one's mouth. And it's a shame because for all he's done to the football club, he did not deserve that. That to me is why I was annoyed that it's a game of emotion. And if you're on the bench and you're a player like Salah, you're obviously not going to be happy. But you've got to understand, you've got to be knowledgeable about the game, that this is not just about Mo Salah, it's about Liverpool Football Club. And it's about Klopp, who has a responsibility for Liverpool Football Club. He made a decision which was absolutely right. And I think the fact that Salah couldn't accept that is it's a damning indictment on Salah, not on Klopp. And I just did not like the reaction. And I hope there's some sort of repercussions on Salah in terms of he does not deserve to start. A, based on form, and B, for the petulance that he has shown. So I hope that he gets what he deserves in terms of not getting a start, because you don't react like that. Right, enough about that. We talked briefly about the successor. You talked about Klopp in mentioning in glowing terms the new man, Arne Slot. I sort of am familiar with him because maybe about sort of just over a year ago when Jesse Marsh was sacked, there was a Leeds angle in this. He was one of the managers that we were courting. He turned us down, like many managers did.
Like the current
And
Bournemouth manager as well.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. But it was when his name was mentioned, I sort of briefly did a research, Wikipedia, and he comes with a certainly from what I read, he's building a really good portfolio. I think he comes with a great reputation. I think he's made all the right noises, and I think he's an excellent choice. I think he will be an excellent choice. I he's done great things with Feyenoord. I mean, it's not a massive league, it's not a massive club within Dutch football, but he's by all accounts, he's a great developer of players. He has an attractive style. He's had some great results. He's done well with Feyenoord. I think this is almost the perfect next step. In a sense, the implosion Liverpool are having perhaps works in his favour because if Liverpool had won the league, if they'd won the Europa Cup, if they'd won the FA Cup, it would have just almost been. I mean, how do you follow that? It almost means now that because there's some sort of a disquiet at Anfield, he perhaps is in a better position because maybe the expectations will be that, look, he needs time to maybe make his mark. We've only won one trophy this year. So if he wins a trophy next season, it's almost on a par with what Klopp did in his last season. So maybe the expectations are slightly lowered now, which gives him a chance to just sort of ease himself in. But certainly, I think in terms of what potentially he's capable of doing, I think what he's done so far in football, because he's been a coach in various capacities for a number of years. So he I think he's quite sure of what he's all about. I think from what I've read and what people are talking about, he's a manager that will have a glowing future. Where that's going to be with Liverpool, who knows? But I think he will be a very good fit. The key thing for me is if you're a manager of Liverpool, it's not just about football, it's about the city. That's the unique thing about managing Liverpool Football Club, that it's a unique city. You've got to get the city. You've got to be somebody who is aware of what the philosophy and the culture of Liverpool is. Now, there tends to be, if you look at Klopp, he was by all accounts a socialist. If you look at one of their greatest managers in the past, Bill Shankly, was a socialist. So it's a club which I think he that type of person? Is he going to get the city? And I think that's going to be instrumental. But as a footballing man, I think they've made a really wise choice. May not be the first choice, but it may turn out to be the best choice.
Very well put. Yeah, look, he may well have been the first choice. It's sometimes difficult to gauge with this. It looks like Xabi Alonso was the first choice. Then there was some talk about Amarim, but you also got to remember that Liverpool have been also carefully constructing a different kind of management staff as well behind the books, or behind closed doors. And when you look at that, you just wonder or not who's leading kind of the appointment, the replacements. Maybe they had on a slot earmarked right from the off. I don't know. It looks Alonso. It looked like Alonso. Don't get me wrong. But you just wonder with that. Yeah, look, the one thing I would say, you mentioned the other segment as well, Ayub, about responsibility. Jurgen Klopp has a responsibility when you were talking about the selection or non-selection of Mo Salah. There is something I do want to touch on. I mean, you covered on a slot very well. There is something that recently has been discussed about the timing of the announcement that he was going to leave and how that's backfired. And I do sometimes despair at I won't call it the lack of intelligence, but the inability of people just to be kind of thoughtful and actually think about what actually transpired here. The question is, Jurgen Klopp could have been incredibly selfish, could have kept it to himself that he was leaving at the end of the year, and could have kept his cards close to his chest, played out the season, and then at the season's end, said to Liverpool, "Oh, by the way, I'm leaving." Which, fine, is the prerogative of many a manager. But Jurgen Klopp made the decision in his mind very early on. And he thought to himself, as a custodian of this incredible football club and as somebody who feels very responsible for the future fortunes. He's not the type of manager who'll want to see the next manager fail. He'll want to see the next manager go on and do big things. He said it and he comes across very genuine in terms of he's a Liverpool supporter now. So he thought, what's the best thing that I can do for Liverpool Football Club if I've already made this decision internally with the family? And he said, look, maybe I should tell them. And he's told them so with a view to Liverpool getting all their ducks in a row and being able to plan for a better future. Maybe Liverpool at that time thought it now is important to make sure we get Michael Edwards back and a few others and all the rest of it, and create a more better structure just to make sure the next guy can come in and follow on from the successes of Jurgen Klopp. What I'm trying to say is he set off a chain of events to put Liverpool Football Club in the best position to be able to plan accordingly after his exit from the club. And him having done that, I think Ayub is now being used as some sort of strategic, as if they strategically thought, let's time it for this particular moment to see if we can get something more out of the place. I absolutely don't think it was. I think once he told the club, it was a matter of time before it leaked. And he thought, well, we have to get ahead of the story. So he's done it in the best interests of Liverpool Football Club. I don't think we can criticize him for that. Then the fact that they then had to take it public is because it would have leaked to you. You can't keep stuff like that under wraps, not in this day and age. You know that, I know that. So I just think something he did for the betterment of Liverpool Football Club is now being used as though, oh look, just by those with a hot take and just not. Maybe I was going to suggest two brain cells to rub together. Maybe I shouldn't be so harsh. But the point is, it's clear what transpired here. It wasn't something strategically they timed with a view to gaining some emotional momentum to drive them to a Premier League title triumph. I mean, even Bain Sports did the announcement. No, this was always going to happen once Jurgen Klopp decided to be selfless in his approach to his leaving of Liverpool Football Club. Again, if he was selfish, he could have just kept it to himself and said, right, guys, by the way, arrivederci, I'm off. But he didn't do that. And I think that's something actually, when considered, should be applauded and should be praised and not criticized like it is in some circles, as though this is what's in the end caused some emotional disturbance within the squad, within the group, and what have you. That's potentially caused some of these kind of losses at the end. I don't think football is as black and white as that. I think it's a mixture of various different variables. Simply, they weren't good enough at the end of the day. So, look, that's something that I do feel quite passionate about. That's something that's being put on him and put on Liverpool when ultimately it's absolutely not justified if you simply just look at the facts.
I mean, I've got to be honest. I wasn't really too aware that that was the take, because I certainly think he did the right thing, because that's the more sensible thing to do when you are going to leave a club of this magnitude. You've got to give the club a chance to prepare for the successor. So I think, I mean, I thought it was textbook. I think that's the way it should be. I think if you're thinking of leaving and you've been a coach for a number of years, you've got to make sure you've got to respect the club. So I'm surprised, and I thought that was the best thing to do, because I really thought it would motivate the players to make sure that they gave the great man the send off that he deserved. It's just, I just think it's a case of the style of play that they have. They just sort of started misfiring at the worst possible time, and I think that's purely what it is. I mean, I don't think the energy levels perhaps are still there. When I look at when they're playing, it seems to be almost exactly the same style of play that they've had previously. It just, Nunes is missing sitters, Salah's missing sitters, Diaz is missing sitters. You can't legislate for that. You cannot legislate for that. If you're not scoring goals, knowing full well you're going to concede, you're going to be in trouble. But it is what it is. It is what it is. Okay, right. And on that note, we've been waffling on for about nearly an hour, so I think it's time to give the viewers a breather, a break, so they can get on with their lives.
I just want to say something very quickly you to finish, if you don't mind. If you don't mind, and I'm sure you won't. Burnley, a team that we were writing off, you and I, and George to
No,
some
you were
extent
writing
was
off. I was at the
even
last
George
show.
behave. Even George was writing them off, so I won't have it. But the point is, honestly, it's such a huge goal for them. Huge goal for them with inferior goal difference, knowing that most likely Forest were going to lose to Man City. What a huge, huge goal, huge penalty under pressure for him to take Abduni, put it away. And honestly, they are absolutely in with a chance. And if I'm not mistaken, tell me if I'm wrong, Ayub, is that the last game home to Forest?
Yeah.
Goodness gracious me, that could be an absolute humdinger.
Well, yeah,
if it comes to it. But
I mean, if that is the case, we're going to have George on the show before. We're going to have to get George on that show. But they're right. I mean, just quickly on Burnley, absolutely fantastic. And I genuinely think that they're in with a serious shout because both of them have quite tricky fixtures, and it could come down to that game, that last game. If there is only, I mean, at the moment, if this was the last weekend, that's the scenario I think that will probably play out. That there'll be maybe 1 or 2 points between them, so it will really be a case of if Burnley win, they stay up, and if that's the case, and what a story, what a story. But that's maybe in a few weeks. So on that note, I'm going to ask you before we go just to do the usual good stuff: share, subscribe, smash a like, all that kind of stuff. And until the next time, stay safe, stay warm. OS is obviously very warm. It's still quite miserable here, but apparently next week it gets warm. So hopefully we're looking forward to that. So until then, see ya.